Okay, dear Julian, how are you?
Hello, nice to meet you again, Richard.
Okay, for me it is very important to be with you in this moment. No, we are in the Congress of SEDIPAC. We are going to pass this Zoom in the Congress and also to use in other days. No, dear Julian, you carry more than 45 years with the Bach flowers. Year after year, the same days, the same flowers, connected with you as a long experience. What that's it means for you in your life, no?
Well, I suppose really Dr. Bach would say the purpose of life is to discover really why you are here and what work you're doing in the world. And for many years when I was younger, I went in one direction as a writer with my work. And then I came upon his book, The 12 Healers and Other Remedies. And I would say it completely changed my life. It changed direction because I started to study this and think, actually, this is really more interesting than what I was doing before. And yes, it's been a long time, but it's been a long and interesting journey, learning all the time more about, well, what is the relationship between us as human beings, one to another, but also us to the world in which we live, and the relationship in terms of healing with the plants and the natural world which we are all part of. Now, you could say, well, you started with writing a book about Bachflower remedies, a little guide to the Bachflower remedies that I wrote, which was in 1978, I think. And I think that seemed a very straightforward thing then. But over the years, I've looked more deeply into the subject, and both as an essence maker, but also as a writer and a researcher. And for me, the most important question is to learn from the plants that you use as an essence maker. What does the plant say to you about its nature? What information does it carry about its quality of life? Now, that may sound a bit strange, but that's how I view this now, because every year it's different, and every year there's something more to learn. And I suppose I will hope to carry on learning, discovering more all the time, until I get so old and so so stupid that I've got nothing more to say.
Okay, and then that's give me another question. For example, with in comparison with the wine, then the people talk about the vintage wine, or is better the 2000 or 2010 or 2007 is the best because the sun, the water, the temperature are factors that produce a better or worse wine. What about your experience with flowers? Is possible that happens the same? Or
Well, I would say that it's never the same. Every time when I go out to make an essence, I think to myself, this is the first time that I've ever done this. And I'm going to not make any assumption as to what is good and what is bad when actually doing the process. Now, what do I mean by that? Because I'm not under pressure to make so many liters of mother essence every year, I've always got a schedule, and I'm on the lookout for the ones that I think it would be good to do this year. And I have to watch the circumstances to make it as best as I possibly can. Now, some years this is easy, and some years it's hard. And let's say you start out with the assumption, well, I'm going to go and make water violet today. And then you go to the water violet and you discover that there's been no rain in the English climate for the last 6 weeks, and the pond where the water violet lives in the water has dried up, and the prospect that looked so good earlier in the year, it's gone. The plants aren't there. They're just their flowers have started to collapse, and because it's too dry. Now, in those circumstances, what do? You say, I'm not going to make this plant this year. I can't do it. Or let's say one of the ones that is more significant and sometimes more difficult, like cherry plum. You have to choose your moment, because if the weather in the early years, let's say in March, is very windy or wild and it bashes the blossoms, then you can't do it. Or that's how I feel about it. So you've got to find the perfect moment of flowering. You've got to get the right weather conditions, particularly with the sun method. No clouds, absolutely clear blue skies. And you've got to be actually yourself. I have to be, not you, I have to be in the right state of mind. So it's no use saying, oh, I'll just make this phone call and then I'll come and do the remedy. No. When you're on an essence making day, that's the only thing that should be in your mind. And no distractions, no interference. I don't have a dog, but if I had a dog, I'd put the dog in the house so that it can, stop it from running around. And the same with actually, let's say, the atmosphere in general. Because if there's a lot of kind of pressure emotionally and even politically on the place where you are and the experience that you have, then your mind is taken up with that and not with the process of making the mother tincture, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So I always keep a notes every year of every essence that I make and make some comments about what I've found and what I learned from it. But I don't say that I can compare the one year with another in any other way than that, because the quality of the essence, if it isn't as good as it can be, then I wouldn't do it.
Okay. And then maybe are some difference, but no is the point, no is important.
Well, there's always a difference. Today is not the same as yesterday, and it won't be the same tomorrow.
But is our difference, but no is important for the.
Well, the real thing is, let's say, what do you think, or what do I think is in the essence? And I would say it's information. If that information is clear and it's written into the water in a way that is clear and succinct without any interference, then the information is true and it's good. So the message is not about, if you like, a quality of flavor or taste, which one person thinks is nice and that one, well, I'm not so sure. You're not comparing two different things. You're comparing the same thing with itself.
Mm-hmm. And then another question that I have, you almost answer, no? If you are using, because you know that these years with the COVID also, the scientific world are embedded all the areas of the life. And then I ask you, are you using technicals like spectrophotometry, chromatography to know more exactly the elements of the senses, to compare year after year what are the most richest, or you believe that are something more qualitative in the essences, no?
Well, yeah, it's a very interesting question, because science does not accept anything which cannot be weighed or measured. No, if that makes sense as a statement. If you can't measure it, you can't tell the quantity of it, it doesn't exist. So how do you measure a quality? And it's very subjective. You may try and use scientific methods to support that assessment. So for instance, I have done some tests on the pH, you know, the pH, the acid-alkaline balance of the water. And I've done research to see whether or not that changes during an essence making process. And it does to some extent, but not in a way that I could say that's a real proof. And you mentioned color chromatography, which is the same thing really, because it's not something that you can analyze what the information is. I mean, somebody listening to this could put a sound recorder against my voice and say, ah, listen, look, he's telling a lie there now because that variation in his voice indicates this or indicates that.
Yes.
But that's not the way that this works, because really, for me, the science, the method of science that I use is what I call the science of observation. That what actually I can see is there, and what I can see that changes is the evidence that is most likely to, not to prove anything, but to substantiate the experience. So when you get fresh spring water, I always get water from a spring, it's come out of the darkness, out of the ground, and it's quite cool. And when you put that in the bowl, the first thing that happens is that the bowl actually frosts up with the condensation. And you put the flowers on, and you can see that the light is in the flower. And anybody could see that, a child could see that. And if you leave it for 3 hours, it changes. I mean, I've done lots and lots of photographs of this. And the air begins to express out of the bowl, but also the light moves away from the flowers and into the water. And you can see it. It's like it's shining brightly, brilliantly, and it rays out from the water. Now, this is what Bach talks about with the combination of the 4 elements, earth, water, air, and fire. And it's the fire that comes from the sun, which enters into the water, that transforms it. And the process by which it transforms is it travels through and with the color and the quality of the flowers that are used on the essence making process. Now, that in itself is absolutely extraordinary to me. I've done it many, many, many times. And it never ceases to amaze me what actually happens. And you can see it. I suppose if it didn't happen for one reason or another, I would not keep that essence. Let's say I'm out there and clouds come up over the sky. No, you don't do that, because what happens with the sun is that the slow, the temperature increases. And the temperature is a factor that definitely is involved in the alteration of the physical structure of water, you know, the molecules, hydrogen and oxygen, and the way that they agitate as the temperature rises. That doesn't mean that if you have more agitation, you get more effect, but there is an opening, as I understand it. I'm not a scientist, but as I understand it, there's an opening in the formulation of the water. And that is where the information is. But if you get down into sort of quantum mechanics and I mean, I can't do this. I wish I could. I wish I had paid more attention when I was younger to science and the physics lessons. But if I'd done that, I would have become a scientist, and then I wouldn't know what I now know as a human being.
Okay, I can understand this explanation. I like very much your explanation about these changes of the in the water, about the energy then receive, about the light of the sun, etc. I am agree with you in these cases.
Okay, good.
And what about the last question, Julian, about the COVID? No, the COVID are affected physically and emotionally all the human beings. Bach flowers are helping to resolve the situations with the COVID. what is your opinion or your experience with this?
Well, perhaps I'd like to go back a little bit first to the previous subject about analysis of the, if you like, the scientific measurement. If we go back to the beginning and see what Dr. Bach wrote about making remedies, and he told everybody how to do it. There was no secret there. There were no trademarks or copyright or anything like that. He made it very free to everybody. And the description that he gives to the need, if you like, for the remedy is the information that is in the plant. So he did, and I know this because I've done the same, is to actually study the plant, be with the plant, and learn from it. And that information is what is in the water in the mother tincture, and it travels as water does through to the dosage strength as you dilute it down, or up to a certain point it does. And that information is what I take whenever I feel the need to have a remedy. Now, COVID-19 obviously is very distressing, and it's caused a lot of trouble to a lot of people. But for a lot of people, there was that trouble before. The fear that many people have about, let's say, illness and disease, it just hasn't been invented in last year when this disease came out from Wuhan. No, I mean, many people lived in exactly the same intensity of difficulty and pain and trauma then as now.
Mm-hmm.
And so you might say, well, which remedy should I take? And I would say, well, how do you feel? Because that's the way that you assess what's the best remedy to take. I don't think there's a combination against COVID. I think there's a combination which is for people who actually become anxious or afraid or restless. But then the same would be true. Let's say we were in, I don't know, in a time of crisis historically, and everything that you touched felt like it was disintegrating and falling apart, whether it was your ambition or your desires or your simply your livelihood. What remedy would you recommend to stop people fighting? Well, it's very difficult. Now, I'm very keen to grow vegetables, and I'm very fortunate that I have the opportunity, the space to do it. But when you go and you plant your seeds, you can't guarantee that they're going to produce the food that you want in 4 months' time or 5 months' time. It's always to do with, I mean, however much care you take, it's to do with fortune in that time. Oh, that's my view. Maybe I'm not a very professional gardener, but if I approach a problem, let's say, I don't know, let's say I'm driving my car and my mind is filled with anxious thoughts about my family or my children. And is that going to increase the chance of me having a dangerous accident?
Yes.
Yes, without a doubt.
Yes, that's possible.
I think so. So the best defense, I think, against COVID, such as it is to stay in your body and stay calm and focus your attention on being careful and doing the right thing, not projecting your anxiety or your mind filled with thoughts about what could go wrong or what could happen. Now you could say, okay, well, that last one, mind filled with thoughts about what could go wrong, that's white chestnut. Yeah, sounds good. Or it might be red chestnut, because I'm not worried about me, but I'm so worried about my mother or my brothers or my sister.
Yes.
It's red chestnut. Or
yes.
I think, I don't know, I haven't washed my hands enough. I'm obsessed with the idea that something is entering me in terms of well, then crabapple. But
Yes,
that wouldn't be
many
any different.
possibilities.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes, many possibilities to
Well,
with the 5 flavors.
38 different remedies. And of course, there's always the combination of the 5 flower remedies, you know, the 5 rescue remedies. And I don't really see this as being different to any other time in that respect.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Julian.
Well,
Thanks a Okay. It's an
I hope you
opportunity
have a
to
wonderful time at the conference, and I'm only sorry that I'm not there to join you in real time.
Okay. See you another time.
Indeed, indeed.
And
Thanks
then
very much.
bye, Julian.
Bye,
Thanks.
Joan. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Okay.